Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Lily, and I'm so happy that you are here with me today on my YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to continue working on some super cute little golden book junk journals, and these are the two new ones that I have just started working on. And I thought I would take you to the process of the beginning process, actually, of where I strengthen the binding. I do have other videos, and in fact, I also have a playlist that I have created where I show you some of the other little golden book altered or junk journals. Everything from how I create the junk journal without damaging the golden spine, because the golden spine is super iconic and it distinguishes this little book from all the others. And so all of that information will be down below, and I will have links to that. But you can also find my playlist on the homepage of my YouTube channel. Okay, so I'm going to work on these a little bit different from how I worked on the others. And so again, I'll have that one linked down below. But the main purpose of this video is to salvage that golden binding. And in this video, I'm approaching it with a different technique or a different method. And instead of strengthening it with, let's say, a 1-inch wide piece of cardboard to keep it from folding in on itself, I'm actually going to cut a strip of cardboard, and I'm going to insert it in that little crevice of the binding. And you can see just down the center of the little golden book, that little crevice. So I am going to cut a strip of cardboard and insert it right down the center of that to keep it from folding. It's actually going to strengthen it a little bit so that it doesn't fold. And now this is cardboard from packaging. It's not very thick, so I'm actually going to double it up, trim it down to about 1/4 of an inch, and just fold it over. So I'm taking advantage of the fact that this one has a folded edge, so I don't need to fold it in half. It's packaging from some curtains I bought at IKEA. I'm telling you guys, I repurpose or try to repurpose everything, especially a good piece of cardboard like this. So you can see how I've trimmed it down right at that fold, and it's a little bit wider than the 1/4 of an inch that I need. So I'm just double checking my measurements, and I'm going to trim it down even more because I want it to fit perfectly in that crevice. And believe it or not, that little strip of cardboard is going to keep it from folding in the areas where we don't want it to crease or to fold. And stick around, because one of the other things that I'm going to do is also demonstrate how I trim down the signature pages, the existing storybook pages, how I trim them down so they can fit the width of the little golden book. And here's a little tip. Because that strip was so thin, I couldn't quite adjust it to trim it in my paper cutter. So I just used a strip of tape to kind of hold it in place so that I could make that cut. So that's just a little tip. Hope you find that useful. So a little bit ahead in the video, I will show you how I trim down those signature pages so that they fit within the parameters of the little golden book. And then I'm going to show you all of the mistakes that I made trying to fix the binding. You guys, this is a video of trial and error. Now, I have only just recently started working on the little golden book junk journals, just recently, something I've been wanting to do for a really, really long time. And now that I'm doing it, I am learning so much, all of the do's and don'ts about working in these little books, because, you know, these are vintage ones. and sometimes they need a little bit of repair, and you have to be careful with these, especially if you don't want to cause any further damage. Now, the little golden book, all about cats, is from 1988, and the other one that is all about God, that one is from 1975. And so, yeah, these are vintage golden books. And some of them are more weathered than others. In fact, the little cat one, which is only from 1988, you just have to handle with care. And you just have to run with it. And so I'm going to show you all of the mistakes that I made and how I go about fixing it. It's paper, you guys, and so you have to be careful with it. And I think as long as we have glue and scissors and other adhesives that will help us along the way, it will make things a lot easier. I almost gave up, and you're going to see that up ahead. I almost gave up, but I wasn't going to let a little golden book defeat me. So stick around for that. It'll be well worth it, and we are going to learn so much today. So you can see how I trimmed down that little strip of cardboard. I've added glue in the center, and now I am just very carefully pressing it in with my bone folder. And you have to be gentle because I don't want the golden binding, the golden spine to tear. I don't want to tear into that. So very carefully pressing it and placing it, or putting it into place. So now I'm unfolding it, and now I will add a second layer of adhesive, because again, I'm doubling up on that cardboard. So just very gentle. Use your bone folder or your finger. You just don't want to use anything sharp to press down and cut through the golden spine. This is art glitter glue, which works so well on paper. It dries super fast and it dries clear, and it stays in place. Great for paper. So again, just pressing it in, and what I want is for that centerpiece to be flush with the rest of the book. In the previous video, I didn't do this part. I did it different, and it works just as great. This is just a different method. It also doesn't add any more bulk to the inside cover. The other one added maybe 1/8 of an inch of extra bulk to the inside cover, which just means that you have to cut down your signatures a little bit more. But either way, both of these techniques work just as well, because the main purpose here is to strengthen that spine to keep it from folding in on itself. Now these do have 2 little staples, and I'm not prying them out because I don't want to damage that golden binding. You can fold them in, little prongs, fold those in, or take some wire cutters and just go down to that flush with the paper and just trim them. Cover it up so that you don't have the little pieces of metal flying all over the place. Just be careful because those are sharp, and then just throw away those little pieces, because if you're like me, I craft barefoot, and I'm careful and making sure that I throw those things straight into the garbage. So just making some minor adjustments to make sure that it is the perfect size, and I will show you how it keeps it together. It works really well. So whichever method you use, just know that either one is going to work. Over the years, I have watched a ton of golden book videos, but they all, at least the ones that I've seen, they all cut the golden spine off. And I just didn't want to do that. And it's one of the reasons that it took me so long to work on these little golden books, because I didn't want to cut into that golden spine or cut it off. And so once I figured out how to make it work for me and how I want it to work, I got into it and now I can't stop, and now this is all I want to work on right now. So the other thing we are going to do is line the inside of that binding, but not completely cover it. I'm only going to cover the area that folds, again, to add more stability and more strength to that binding. So these are the two papers that I have chosen. These are both scrapbooking papers in coordinating colors. This glitter paper in particular was a major fail, and I will tell you more about that in just a little bit. But don't you just love that when you find the perfect pieces to work with and then it doesn't work out? But again, trial and error. I had to do it. I didn't know that it was not going to work out for me until I tried to move on, and then I realized it was a big fail. So more about that in just a little bit, but for right now I'll show you how I just trim it down to size. And these strips are the length of the Golden Book, so that is 8 inches, and then I'm only cutting it 3 inches wide. Just enough to fit in the center because I don't want to cover up the inside of the book. Can you see the name of who this book belonged to back in 1988? Quincy Girl. And I didn't want to cover that up. I just thought that was so cute. A little girl named Quincy owned this book, and she put her name right where it belongs. I come across a lot of these, and that area is blank, so it's pretty cool to have this one already there. And so we are going to save that. We're not going to cover up Quincy Girl. So you can see there, only 3 inches wide, just to cover up that binding. Just glue it into place. And now I'll take my bone folder and make sure that it is smoothed over that binding. And then I'm going to gently go into the creases just to make sure that the front and the back cover will easily open and close or fold. And again, be gentle with those creases. The glue is still a little bit wet, and for this I used Fabric Tack. Fabric Tack it doesn't dry hard, it's pliable, and so it's perfect for the binding so that your pages or your book can easily fold. So just smoothing that out and getting rid of any excess glue that may spew out. And there is your cover. Can you see there? It's no longer folding in that center area. And believe me, it's holding up. So it makes it for a sturdy binding. And this way you don't cut the binding, we're just going to enhance it. We have the second book, which I am going to do the exact same thing with. Do you see how it's strengthened? How it doesn't fold anymore because of that little inner or that little middle strip of cardboard. So again, I'm going to take a strip of coordinating cardstock, and I'm just loving this scrapbooking paper with the gold foil hearts. A lot of gold foil will go into these books. Again, because it is a golden book, I will try to use a lot of golden embellishments and ephemera in these junk journals. But this one, oh my gosh, it's so cute. I went through my entire stash of scrapbooking paper and I separated anything that had foil and especially hearts. So again, I'm trimming it down. It will be 8 by 3, and that is a perfect size for that inside binding. It doesn't cover up too much of the inside covers. So we're still kind of saving or keeping the integrity of the book. We don't want to use papers that are too thick. This is scrapbooking paper. It is somewhat heavy but not too thick, because we're going to fold. Once we glue it down, we're going to crease it at the front and the back cover, right where the folds are. And we want to make sure that it opens and closes easily and it doesn't break the paper. I think if the paper were to be too thick, it would break. It wouldn't be as pliable. You also don't want to use paper that is too thin, because we want it to have some weight so that it adds more stability and strength to that binding. Again, just smoothing out that glue. And then once I bring in or fold in the front and the back cover, very carefully, I'm going to crease with my bone folder right where those fold lines are. There are so many different techniques and methods to alter a little golden book. I know that, like I said earlier, most of the ones, well, all of the ones that I've watched cut the binding off the golden spine. And this is just what I'm doing. It works for me to keep that golden spine and just add a little bit of strength to it. I suppose we can use other materials as well, other than paper, fabric, but I'm liking the look of the scrapbooking paper in the journals. The size of the spines vary a little bit. I believe this one is 1 1/4 inches wide, where the other is about 1 inch. And I've noticed with most of the ones that I've worked on, those have been the typical sizes between 1 and 1 1/4 inches. And also smoothing down, when you fold the covers in and you make those crease lines, you need to make sure that the sides, as I'm showing you here, stay glued down so that we don't want those lifting. So just very carefully crease, fold, and burnish. Cut off or trim off any excess. And I've realized too that this is a perfect size for a junk journal. I'm not a fan of the really thick junk journals. Well, I like them thick. I like them thick and bulky. I'm referring to the spine itself. I like to go as wide as maybe 1 3/4 inch. Anything more than 2 inches, it doesn't feel as comfortable in my hands. They look amazing, and they're bulging out, and they're fun to look through. But when I'm working on them, or when I'm, doing my journaling, I like it to be under 2 inches. I remember when I first started making junk journals, 5 years ago or so, 5-6 years ago. My first one, I think, had a 4-inch spine. That was insane. I took it apart, and I think I made 6 journals out of the one. There were so many signatures in it. And again, trial and error. Now I work on sizes that I personally care for, that I like. But I admire everybody else's work. I just want to put that out there. There's nothing wrong with it. I think once you begin to make your own journals, you realize what you like and you kind of stick with that. Here is the bind. Look at how beautiful that looks. That golden spine is amazing. It looks so nice. And it's just a perfect size, and they feel so great in your hands. So we're going to set those aside for a little while so that they can completely dry. And right now I'm just going to show you how the original signatures, the story pages to the books, are now too wide for the junk journal. Because now that we have altered the spine, we've got excess. So all we need to do is trim that off. And I like to trim the outside pages. I'm not cutting into the folds. I'm going to leave the folds as they are because the signatures are basically already created. So there's no reason to cut into the folds and then reattach them once you get your pages into your junk journal. So we're just going to trim. See, we're going to leave the left side intact and we're only going to trim about 1/4 of an inch on the right hand side. So the book is 6 inches wide. And the pages are now about, maybe 6.5 inches. So I'm cutting somewhere between 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 an inch off of the signatures. So you'll just want to make sure that you measure. Measure twice, cut once. Remember that. I've made a lot of cuts by measuring once, and I have made a lot of mistakes. So it looks like it may be, about 1/2 an inch. And each of these signatures only has about 3 pages that are folded in half. So it was easy to run it through the paper cutter. And you could see how a lot of the story was not cut. A lot of the story is centered on the pages, so don't be afraid to cut into that outside edge. A lot of the times it's just a blank space or minimal graphics on it. But remember, these are going to be background pages. So if we cut into some of the graphics and some of the text, it's okay. These are background pages to our journaling. If we wanted to keep the story intact, then we would not be altering the book. Just remember that. It's hard. But these books I purchased at thrift stores, and I think they were on their last leg. I don't know what they do with books that haven't sold or some that are really beat up. Oh my gosh, they throw them away? Woo! So there was a tiny bit of text that was trimmed off of this signature, but again, these are going to be background pages. You'll be covering them, adding to them, journaling on them, making them your own. So don't be afraid to cut that edge off to make it fit. And now that they have been cut down to the perfect size, we're just going to set them aside. And I will have another video that I'm working on after this one, where I make the paper selections and I bind the signatures to the spine, and that is in a future video. So you can see that the signatures now fit perfectly into their books, and they are looking beautiful. Can you tell how one of the bindings is not as golden as the other? That's the one that was probably read through much more. It kind of looks silvery. Some of that gold has rubbed off. But okay, this is where we talk about my fail, you guys. This is that strip of gold glitter paper that I used in this junk journal. Well, guess what I did? I didn't realize that this was sticker paper. sticker glitter paper. So guess what I did? When I glued it down, I glued the back of the sticker paper straight onto the inside of the cover. OMG, I had no idea it was glitter paper. It felt like, sticker paper. It felt like sticker paper, but I didn't know it was actually sticker glitter paper. That's pretty cool that I discovered that, but guess what? It failed on the inside of the cover. And I noticed it. I set them aside to dry. When I grabbed it to start working on it again, I noticed that it started to bubble. And then the edges started to lift, and here's the piece that just peeled right off the backing of the sticker paper. Oh my gosh. So the only thing that was left on it was the backing of the sticker paper. Major fail. I could have left it, but the problem with that, nothing would stick to it because it has a glossy surface. So I had to rip it apart. Made a mess. I did it off camera. I was so upset. But then I just took some of that pink scrapbooking paper and lined the inside. As I was doing that, I also noticed that the outside binding was split, and it's something that I didn't even notice when I was first handling this little golden book about cats. And so this is where I try to make some repair work by using everything in my arsenal. Oh my gosh. So I thought, well, easy fix. I'll just take some of this packaging tape and glue it down on the outside cover so that it keeps the cover from splitting open, right? Because you could see that right there. It split, and I needed to keep it together. So I added a piece of packaging tape right over it, but then guess what? It's slick. Nothing sticks to it. So I wanted to add ribbons and trims as an embellishment, but it wouldn't adhere to the packaging tape because it is glossy and it didn't work. So I had to tear off the packaging tape, and when I did that, I ripped up the cover, you guys. I wanted to cry. I ripped up the cover, so then I tried to cover those torn, that torn look with some of this other glitter paper I have. And that didn't work. It didn't stick because it's glossy on the back and it wouldn't stay down. Oh my gosh, I was getting so frustrated. Now, when I pulled up, a little disclaimer here. When I pulled up the clear packaging tape, I left the center of it, the part that goes over the golden spine, I left that intact because I wasn't going to tear into that. So that is protected with a layer of packaging tape. So I just trimmed it off the sides where you see those torn edges. So then I thought, hey, I have a binding tape that I could use to save it, but it's red and I don't want it red. I want it to kind of match the rest of the book. So I took some gold paint and I painted my red bookbinding tape. By the way, this is bookbinding tape that I want to say is about 15 years old. So maybe don't use 15-year-old bookbinding tape because I'll tell you right now, spoiler, it didn't work. Did not work. This is from a kit, a bookbinding kit that I bought over 15 years ago from Martha Stewart. I never used the bookbinding tape, but I still had it in my stash. Well, I went through the trouble of painting it, and look, it turned out great. I love the way the gold looks over that red binding tape. So if you have something and you don't like the color, don't be afraid to paint it. In fact, I have a pair of Vans sneakers that I have painted because I didn't like the original color. So you could paint anything. So I'm going to save you the trouble of you watching me glue down the bookbinding tape. The adhesive on it wasn't sticky, and so I had to add glue to keep it down. So what I want, fingers crossed, is for it to save to stick to the folds, you guys. Because the folds, that's where the book is splitting. But the moment I folded the book, it lifted the bookbinding tape. It didn't work. Big, major fail. Major fail. So those are the little edges that lifted. The moment I closed or folded the cover, it lifted the edges. So then I just went in with my scissors and trimmed it all up. I was afraid to tear it up because I didn't want to tear into the golden spine, and I didn't want to tear into the cover anymore. Now, this video was done over the course of 2 or 3 days because I was getting so frustrated. And I spent a lot of time just staring at the book, trying to figure out how to make it work. Because I am determined to save that golden spine, and I didn't want to cause any damage to it, and I didn't want to cut it off. But nothing will stick down the center because it has the clear packaging tape. So now I thought, okay, I'm going to use some of this scrapbooking paper and again trim it down to size, maybe 1.5 inches. I'm going to cover up the bookbinding tape that I painted gold, and I'm going to go over the folds, glue it down, and now I'm going to use this one. This one's got to work. I use it to hold metal embellishments, so it's got to hold this scrapbooking paper. So you think. But guess what? Spoiler, it didn't work. Didn't work again. And I'll tell you why in a moment. So I put that glue under the scrapbooking paper, glued it down, and to make sure that it sticks down, especially when I fold the cover, I'm going to cover it with more packaging tape. Why not? You guys, seriously. I was at, what's that expression? I was at my wit's end. Oh my gosh, I was losing it. So, here is where it failed. I used packaging tape over that scrapbooking paper, and the moment I folded it, you guys, it lifted again. So you could see how the paper lifted. The paper did not glue down. So this is where I add the packaging tape to keep those edges down. And I'll tell you why it didn't work. It worked on the outside cover, so you could see how I'm placing it just outside of the scrapbooking paper and onto the original cover of the book so that it holds down. So just a little bit over the edge there on the right hand side over the scrapbooking paper, but on the left hand strip or the inside. Am I making sense? Oh my gosh. That middle part where the golden spine is, that's where the trouble is. There's already a layer of packaging tape underneath, and nothing's going to stick to it. Not even its own kind of tape. Do you see that? I folded it. Oh, and it lifted. It lifted again. I may have shed a few tears right here, and I was ready to give up. I'm like, I'm done. No more. Let's just move on to something else. And I was going to set it aside and forget about it. But then the very next day I said, no, I'm not giving in. I'm not going to let you defeat me. So I tore the tape off very carefully from the middle. Only from the middle and only that top layer. That was easy to come up because it didn't stick down to the other packaging tape. So now I'm just going to clean it up. Clean up right at the folds. And that's where That's where the problem area is, and that's the area I'm trying to salvage. So that when the journal opens and closes, the spine doesn't come apart. So here's the next genius idea. Let's use ribbon. Ribbon is more pliable and flexible so that when I fold the cover, it's going to move with it. That's definitely going to work. I got it. So I'm going to glue it down with some Fabri-Tac. It's nothing but raw paper underneath, so it has to stick down, right? I'm getting so excited because yes, it's going to work. So now it's glued down, and I'm going to fold it. I'm testing it. It's lifting, but it's because it's still wet. The glue is still wet, so we are going to let it sit overnight so that it is completely adhered. So when I close the junk journal, fold those covers, it's going to be completely adhered and the spine is saved. Ta-da! This is the next day. It didn't work. There are the strips of ribbon. You guys, I didn't know how much more I could take of this. The moment I folded it with those gold ribbon in place, it lifted. Even after it's sitting overnight, I was done. Peeled them off and set them aside. And this is where I thought, I'm giving up. I'm giving up. But then I thought, wait, I'll give it one more try. And I did this off camera because I thought, I'm not even going to record it anymore. What's the point? Well, I have this cotton bird trim. And it's about 1.25 inches wide. And I glued it down. I thought, maybe this will work. So I glued it down. But I not just glued it down. I not only glued it down, I took it to the sewing machine. And I stitched it because glue just wasn't my friend for this spine. So I glued it, and I did have to do it twice. There are 2 layers of ribbon on the right-hand side because I didn't layer it over the fold. So I had to do it again, and I had stitched it, so I wasn't about to unstitch it. So I just did a second layer, and you can see how one layer overlaps the other on the right-hand side, but I still managed to save a little bit of the golden spine. A little bit. And I didn't tear up that scrapbooking paper because I didn't want to damage the cover. And guess what? It worked! Ta-da! Ta-da! It works, you guys. I open and folded and open and folded and open and folded again to make sure that it was going to stay in place. And I was actually really surprised that my sewing machine stitched right through that cover. And all those layers, it's the cover, it's bookbinding tape, it's scrapbooking paper, it is cotton ribbon or trim, 2 layers on that right-hand side. Oh, I love my little sewing machine. I love it. And now I get to add that embellishment that I've added to all of the others. I won! So the moral of the story is, you guys don't give up. I know that I almost gave up, but I worked through it. I tried all kinds of different techniques, some that I didn't even record to spare you the pain. But don't give up. Keep trying. And sometimes we just need to set things aside and come back to them when we have a better mindset, when we've calmed down and we're not tearing our hair out. So I love this scallop trim. Love it. Oh, the other thing I did that I've not mentioned that I did to the inside, because I was opening and closing this and tearing it apart and then did all of that stitching, I was worried that the scrapbooking paper on the inside would come apart. Because after I stitched it, it's basically, perforating that paper. And I didn't want it to split open. So I added a layer of that packaging tape to the inside just to kind of reinforce it. And it turned out great. There is nothing getting through to this spine, you guys. I think it's the toughest spine out of all the junk journals I have ever made in my life. Nothing is penetrating. You cannot tear this one apart. You can play tug of war with it. It is not going anywhere. So you can see that shiny section right in the middle. That's where I added the packaging tape, just for a little added protection, and it worked. It worked. I'm telling you, it took me 3 days to work on this spine. This video should have been up a week ago. Oh my gosh. So if you have any fun stories to share like that, anything that you've done where you've tried and tried again until you finally succeeded, let me know down below. Oh my gosh. Yep, to the point where I was ready to tear my hair out. That scallop trim, and I've used it in all of the little golden books on the very front cover, just on the edge. And I love it. I have searched for it far and wide, and I cannot find it. It is like it's like a brushed gold. It is a vinyl with like a cotton backing so that it sticks. And I love it. I've had it for a few years. I want to say I purchased it at Michael's several years ago, right around Christmas time. So I'm hopeful that this upcoming holiday season, maybe they'll bring it back and I'll find it. I will be there looking for it, because I'm down to maybe half a yard now. Oh, there we go. Now I know that I covered a lot of that golden spine, but I didn't cover it all. It's still there, and a little bit is still shining through. Oh, what an ordeal, but look, we made it, you guys. We made it. I hope that didn't cause you anxiety and frustration. Because watching this play back, yeah, I remember all of those feelings I had, and they weren't so good. I may have cursed a little bit too. So you guys, thank you so much. I know this video, this was all over the place. Trial and error, fixed my mistakes, made it work, and now it is so cute. I love the look of the scrapbooking paper that's there on the binding. I love the way the bird ribbon looks, and then with that scallop trim. Oh, I am loving it. It's turned out great. I think it's going to be one of my favorites. You guys, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you so much. Give me a thumbs up if you like it. Let me know down below, and I will see you next time when we continue on these junk journals. You guys take care. Bye!